I wanted to give you 3 more questions to think about so you know the level of complexity we're talking about when we say technical questions. I'm not going to give you too many indications about how to answer them because I strongly suspect most of the people watching this will know better than me because I don't come from a finance background.
I'd prefer that we continue.
But it gives you an idea as to how you should think when applying for different roles in terms of technical questions. And these are questions that were asked for markets or investments analysts. Give me an example of a recent merger that would pay dividends. Why? Give me 2 metrics that you would use to choose to assess a company. And if you were given £5 million, what would you invest in? Now, the last question, the first 2, I don't tend to come across too much. The last question, I've seen this question asked a lot over the years, particularly for investment analyst roles, because essentially that's your job, right? It's just thinking about what's my job? Well, I'm going to be working in corporate finance. Tell me how to construct a discounted cash flow model. I mean, if you can't do that, then really you shouldn't be doing the job. It's like turning up at a mechanics and saying that you want to work there, and someone gives you an oil filter and says, "Cool, can you change that oil filter for me? I've already jacked up the car." And you're like, "Oh, I don't know how." And they're like, "Why are you here? You don't actually know how to do the job. If you want to be a mechanic, then you should probably go and train first. When you're done training, why didn't you come and see me afterwards?" And I think that's something that's often missed with jobs, where people say, "Oh, I don't know how to do this," but you should, because that's what they're asking you to do. There is a minimum requirement or a standard of skill for some more technical jobs, and you should know how to do that. If you don't know, that's fine. You have the internet, so you can learn, like for example, from videos like this. You can go and learn how to put together a discounted cash flow model, but you shouldn't feel like you're being persecuted against because you can't answer that question because you were too lazy to prepare. All right. Now, these didn't come up so much, and it really depended on the role.
Know your role.
But it will give, by knowing these questions, it's going to give you a really good idea of the specificity that you'll need, and actually that a lot of companies are tailoring their application processes to the role. So, for example, an analyst could be asked, what are the key factors affecting Citi and your division? Somebody who's applying for investment banking could be asked, talk about a recent merger that you were interested in. Or a markets analyst might say, how would you price a certain futures contract? Now, you'll notice that these are not really difficult questions, but personally for me, because I don't come from a finance background, I would struggle to answer that as a normal person because I don't really know. And what it says is, by understanding the job description and showing a genuine motivation, these are probably things that you would already know. Now, it doesn't mean that you've got to go away and revise and rehearse and go back for everything that you've ever learned, but certainly something like going through, a simple finance course or just looking for Investopedia, just making sure that actually you are interested in it more and above and beyond than just the money. And finally, tell me about a recent piece of news. This is a question that we've noticed come up more and more for different companies. And why is that? Well, if you want to work in a bank, you really want to be engrossed in the financial markets. Now, I don't mean reading the Financial Times every day, but you could just subscribe to a daily email blast, even a weekly email blast. If you're not that finance literate, I highly recommend starting with somewhere like BBC Business or Reuters, instead of diving straight into the deep end of a Bloomberg or a CNBC. A lot of times when speaking to candidates, they don't know how difficult the technical questions are going to be, so they kind of struggle with that. They're like, should I read the Financial Times? Do I need to read The Economist? Should I basically revise everything I've ever learned about finance ever? I'm like, dude, no. No! It's fine, relax. So the technical questions would come up, which was like, what do you know about profitability at HSBC? You know nothing? Read their annual report. Why is it important to focus on financial goals? Annual report. Name 3 current trading risks. Bloomberg. Right? So this is not that difficult, but it is quite good to read a little bit into their annual report, What are the divisions of the bank that are doing well? What's more profitable? What's less profitable? It's a little bit more in depth, and you'd expect this for front office roles, but it's definitely worth doing. What about the other questions that we could get? Well, first of all, there's commercial awareness. I always say this for anybody who's looking to work within banking and finance, or even accounting and professional services, that you should be subscribed to some kind of industry news and keeping up to date with that at least once a week. Now, you don't need to read the Financial Times every day. You may not be like me. I think many years ago I tried to do that, and it was so painful because it just took me hours, and I just felt really disconsolate about the whole thing. But the truth is just signing up to a weekly newsletter from someone like the Banker or Bloomberg or FT, whoever it may be, and just keeping up to date. Because if you're applying for a role which is related to finance, then the common question could be, tell me about a company that you would invest in, something that interests you in the markets lately. Tell me about factors which are affecting investing. This is all common sense, but you'd be surprised how many candidates are just kind of left high and dry because they're not really keeping up to date with business news. And finally, I want to talk to you about technical questions. Now, first of all, to define this, you don't have to know everything about the subject. For example, say you're applying to work in corporate finance, but it does really help if you're familiar with the basics, and importantly, if you can explain the basics. Now, this is quite a crucial differentiation. Very often I find that graduates and students will say that they know something. I say, okay, cool, teach me. This is something which comes from Richard Feynman, or the Feynman technique. And it's something that if you've never watched a video from Richard Feynman or seen the Feynman technique in action, then it's a great thing to do. And actually it's part of the reason why I do these videos, because I find that it makes me better at understanding and helping our clients by teaching people how to do stuff with clarity. So for example, you might have easy technical questions like IBD, what is a discounted cash flow model? A general analyst, what would you invest in? In operations, what do you think the operations department does, or what is the functions? How does clearing and settlements work? I'm telling you these questions because they're not difficult. They're not particularly hard, but they are testing if you know the fundamentals and the basics for what you would be doing in this role. And you can normally get a pretty good indication of what types of technical questions might be asked by just looking at the job description, by looking at what they're asking for in the skills and experience, and just thinking, hey, what if somebody said to me, say they asked for a particular type of models or software, and the same goes for software engineering as well. The only differentiation for software engineering and technology, some technology roles for Goldman Sachs, is you may well have the coding interview just before, which we've had with some candidates, which is 2 questions from LeetCode or HackerRank, which take about 45 minutes. But the feedback that we've gotten from our candidates is that it's relatively easy. And that's something that you can practice by yourself as well. So there you have it, guys. That's everything about how to pass the video interview. What are some other questions? What's a stock you would like to go long or short on? This came up in an investment banking analyst interview. That just kind of seems like a no-brainer that you'd know stuff like that. What did the FTSE 100 close at yesterday? So today I'm filming, it is Wednesday, the 2nd of June. On the 1st of June, it closed at 7080.46. I don't know what that means. So if you're kind of thinking, well, what questions am I going to get asked because I want to apply for this role and blah, blah, blah. Just think about questions that you would reasonably be able to answer. I mean, what they're really trying to screen out are people that don't genuinely have an interest in the role. And that's quite easy to do if you just pick out some little facts. So it could be, what's the DAX doing? What's the CAC 30 doing? And so on and so forth. It's so easy to do, and just pick apart the people who just aren't interested.